Welcome back, everybody, to the Aaron's High Cabin Metro Radio program, July 27, 2019. And to my left sits Bill Whitmire. I think more importantly than Republican chair is the host of Bleacher Bum Radio, right?
There are some that would say that.
Bill, how you doing today?
All right, how are you?
Doing all right. I know you're a man who's up to speed. Well, you are. You're the Republican chair for the Mountain County, so you're pretty much up to snuff when it comes to a lot of things in the political world.
Try to stay that
That's
way.
why it's always good to talk to you, because I know you're. You know, I was talking about this to somebody else. I was talking to an attorney friend of mine. I was saying, if we all sat in the same room, Bill knows what's going on all the time. I mean, he's very savvy. It's like me. I'm very aware of things in the gun world. Okay, you're very aware of things in the political world as well as many other things too. But you've got a layman like me who goes, well, what does that mean when it comes to me in this country and all this kind of stuff? Whereas you talk about it in the political aspect of it. And then you got the attorney who can give the legal reason as to why it's applicable in certain cases.
Yeah.
It's a great thing. And in the license to carry laws, they make sure there's a civilian on the board, I believe, when these attorneys are writing up these laws. So I guess if the civilian goes, huh? What does that mean? They might be able to clear up the language a little bit better. So I think it's just a great little combination of those three types of people. And I was having that conversation the other day. And
Well, there's a lot of people that think that laws are written up by the congressmen, written up by the legislators, and they're not. A lot of times they're written up by lobbyists or by lawyers or by think tanks. When we hear this term think tank, a lot of people don't even understand what it is think tanks necessarily do. But we were talking about this morning, we were sitting in here, we were talking about Bill Flores, and he beat Chet Edwards back in 2010. Chet Edwards had been our state representative for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Did he come back home to Central Texas and reopen whatever he does for a living? No, he stayed in McLean, Virginia, and opened up a think tank that does consulting and lobbyist work. And that's what he's been doing now for 10 years or so since he lost. These guys, they don't come back home.
what are some of the bigger ones? CFR, right?
For lobbyist type stuff.
Think tanks.
There's on the conservative side, there's the Heritage Foundation. I mean, they're all over the place. The thing to remember is our congressmen go. We talk about term limits all the time, but the term limits, that while they are effective for congressmen, where we need to term limit people is from serving as chiefs of staff, serving as legislative aides, serving as spokesmen. For example, you can look in most chiefs of staff for congressmen can't make enough money to live in Washington, D.C. and serve as chiefs of staff. So they're a chief of staff for 2, maybe 4 years for a congressman. And they go to K Street and they become a lobbyist. Or they work for special interest groups where they can make big money, or advertisers where they can make big money. We had a chief of staff recently for one of our local congressmen. I won't mention his name. But his wife ran an advertising firm. This man made about $110,000 a year as a chief of staff in D.C., which realistically, that's not a lot of money in D.C. But his wife was making about $250,000 to $300,000 a year through her advertising agency from that same congressman. So the wife and husband together were making well over probably $350,000 to $400,000 a year from this congressman. And after a couple of years, or a couple of terms as his chief of staff, he left and he went to work for K Street, as a lobbyist, where he can make a lot of money. Notice how those guys do. They drift back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and they make a cottage industry and a career there of people that just serve in government.
Let's take into effect here what I said about the three people, the layman, the political person, and the attorney. You just said lobbying. Everybody here is lobbyist. We're going to be lobbying, blah, blah, blah. What does it mean? Can you give an example and why somebody would want to do it and how it affects us as a nation, the people, so on and so forth? So what's a lobbyist? What do they do? Who do they
Well, let's let's just take an industry, and I'm not trying to pick on a certain industry, but let's say big pharma.
Right. That's a key.
You get a lobbyist that works for any one of these companies that produces medicine, Merck or some of them, and they come out and they say, hey, look, we've really got to get this pushed through. We need the FDA to work on this. We need not only that, but we need some help getting some money from the government, a grant or something. And so they'll go to congressmen, especially the ones that represent the area where that pharmaceutical company resides and where their factory is, and they'll go to them and say, hey, look, Humpty Dumpty Medical Services here needs this money. You need to find a way to get it into a bill into anything. And that's why when you have a bill, now you might have a bill that's arms for the military,
And it's fantastic.
special arms, and they'll stick this little rider in there that provides money for this pharmaceutical company. And that's where lobbyists, they'll go. The NRA has a lot of lobbyists, and anytime there's an attack on the Second Amendment, they'll put their lobbyists to work
But why
there.
would the person that they're lobbying to want to do it? What would be some of the reasons why they want to do it besides campaign funds?
We'll find a way to get some money into your war chest. One of my biggest complaints with election financing is that these guys, once they run for office, they never have to shut down their campaign fund. I've every year at the state Republican convention, I've put in a deal where 90 days after an election or 90 days after a candidate drops out, they have to close their campaign fund. And we've started to pick up some steam. The first year I did it, nobody backed me. This last year we had, I think, 32 counties that backed me, 32 county chairmen that backed me. And the reason for that is it forces them to shut down their campaign fund, and they have no way of raising money until everybody else does. Incumbents in America have such a... They are backed by these lobbyists that'll make sure money gets pumped into their campaign. Maybe they don't do it directly, but indirectly, they'll make sure people have money to put money into these candidates' funds, and they'll build up this war chest to where when you have a congressman, and he may be the sorriest individual, or she may be the sorriest individual there, but they have a chance to build up a $2 or $3 million war chest, and some guy that really has good ideals, really wants to get into office and do a good job for us, he can't even get a head start. He can't even get traction because he never can get the money to match what that sitting congressman has. And let's not forget, these congressmen, somehow, so many of them go to Congress, and they're just like you and me, Matt. We're upper middle class, maybe middle class. They'll go to Congress, and within 7, 8, 9, 10 years, suddenly they're millionaires.
That's right.
Man, how did that happen? Because obviously they're only making about $150,000 a year
Some
working
would
for
say
Congress.
because they know the law is coming down, and they wait and they plan it so that they can adjust their lifestyle to those laws coming up.
I work in an industry where you have vendors that come in all the time, and they're like, "Hey, man, we really want you to use this service. You know what? We have a luxury suite at the Texans game. Would you like to go to this?" Or, hey, oh, you need your land cleared? Yeah, well, we've got dozers. We can help you out with that, and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's on a small scale where I am, but in Congress, it's even bigger. And there's ways you hear about it and you don't hear about it. If you actually went and looked online at the House Ethics Commission, we hear about it every now and then when one senator or one House of Representative member does something that's outrageous. But what we don't hear are all the little incidents. And there are a lot of little incidents where congressmen get their hands slapped all the time, and they just don't care.
Have you noticed?
They do not care.
Am I seeing this wrong, or am I seeing this right? Where a lot of people in positions of power in the government are not the people you might want to have in there, but the ones that you might want to have in there are always kept in a small position, and for some reason they've got to do some qualifying feats of money collection. Mm-hmm. Can you clarify that, since you're savvy on that type of stuff? They're like boards. You generate a certain amount of money, and we may consider you important to put on another board because you're pulling money into the party.
Yeah, can you go and campaign fundraise for us? If you can do this for us, if you can draw this in, then there might be a better chairmanship for you or a better seat on a better committee.
As compared to the person knowing what they're doing, it could be beneficial.
That's
based on
right.
their knowledge.
That's right. And that happens when you get that guy in that office. He's that incumbent, he or she. I keep saying he, but just go with me with it. But that person gets in office. They're the incumbent. It's like it's just being the incumbent. You have an 80% chance of winning any election. Just being the incumbent, and especially in Congress and in the Senate, because at those spots you've got a war chest. You keep it open, and as your war chest gets bigger, what can you do with it? I've got $5 million in my war chest. I'm only going to need $500,000 to win this next election. You know what, Matt? You're having a little trouble in your district. Let me put some of my campaign funds in your coffer. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I need some help with this bill. Can you come over here and help me with this bill? That happens all the time. And as these guys get more and more wealthy, as their campaign war chests get bigger and bigger, they have more influence on especially the newer congressman, the one without as much money. That's why it's important. When you have a good congressman and they say they need to raise money, folks, it's important to give those good congressmen money, because that helps reduce the amount of influence somebody else can have over those folks. And let's be realistic. We're just people. Whether we're a congressman, we're the president, no matter who we are, we're just people, and we have all the same influences, all the same desires, all the same needs.
There's nothing wrong with that in the private sector. If you want to do a favor for one person or another, that's different. But when you're talking about the public, the protector of the public, advancer of American ways, but you do it in sordid ways to favor yourself.
That's why you close that campaign finance. You make them close their campaign accounts, close all of their accounts 90 days after the election. They can't use that anymore. They can't say, look, I've got $5 million in my campaign war chest, because they never have to close it. All they got to do is report it every month. Never have to close it. And they can give to any of their associates in the House or in the Senate as they feel they need to, and say, hey, let me give you this money. This will help you in your campaign. And by the way, I want you to support me on this. If you make them close that account, now the lobbyists can't give them money because there's nowhere for them to put it unless they give it directly to them, which would be bribery. There's nowhere for these other sitting officials to give money to these other elected officials, because if they did that, they'd have to do it. I'd have to write you a check straight to Matt Betros. Here's bribery now. I've just bribed you to back my deal. But if I do it from war chest to war chest, it's not bribery. I'm just helping you with your next campaign. Right. And it's a legal form of bribery that happens every day in Washington and in Austin.
Bill, the problem is people who listen to shows like this, talking heads, are people who are in the know. The people who listen, and they get it. But I think the majority of the people are either don't care or too busy trying to make a living, don't understand, don't know. So it's like, how do you fix this? Because if you're talking to the talking heads, you're part of the choir. So how do we get past this, in your opinion, besides just beating the drum constantly? Is there any other thing we can do to get people more aware and out of the ignorant stage of politics to realize, hey, you're being played?
Well, sadly, in this day and world, unless you're doing it on social media, it's not going to have an effect on people mostly 30 years and younger. And so you've almost got to find a way to be positive about it on social media to sell it to this younger generation.
So as it was in the revolution, it is today, and that's 30% of the population, the one who's going to make the decision for the future of this country, right?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, we only had 22% of the people vote in the last primary. It was less than 30.
And I was.
I've said it a million times. The best thing that we could do is to have set the budget every year, and then after you set the budget, then set the tax rate based on the budget, so that you pay everything that's in the budget plus 10%, so we can pay off the national debt. And then once you do that, everybody, and you make it a flat rate across, so whether you make $1 million or you make $100, you're going to pay, let's just pull a figure out of the air. If we tried to do that for this year's budget, everybody would have to pay close to 44% in taxes to cover the budget that was just approved by the federal government. If everybody had to pay 44%, whether you made $100 or $1 million,
there'd be a lot of griping going on.
There'd be a lot more people voting.
That's right.
Because you take 44% of my income, I vote anyway, but a lot of my friends, they don't care because nothing that happens affects them. Why? Because we keep passing all this. We keep giving more money, but all we do is keep drawing on the future. So nobody here and now today feels it. But if you make people feel it, they'll show up and vote. Nobody cared about what happened in Milam County until the tax rate got way high. Now everybody's an expert. Everybody wants to know what's going on.
Let's segue to this then, okay?
Yeah.
We're talking about, got an article here I saw, House approves $15 minimum wage. Senate prospects are dim, thank goodness. And then the follow-up article was wage bill, a job kill, and it was an editorial. Ladies and gentlemen, the people who come up with these bills, I don't think have ever had a business or a job in their life.
Yep.
If you're a business owner, a small business owner is what, 80% of the way this country survives? A small business owner is cutting pennies here, pinching pennies here, cutting coupons here to make the budget, make a little bit of profit, and live in a decent home and pay his employees. And that's when the minimum wage goes up. And the purpose for the minimum wage is it's a new start into the work industry. It's a low-level type of job. So people get to on-the-job training, getting their basic minimum. This kids living at home, young adults who are just starting out, just going to learn a skill, and then you move on from there once your resume gets built up and you get the higher paying jobs. But if you start at $15 an hour and you've got a person with a small business, it's going to break them. Pick up on that because I know we were talking about a couple articles there.
Well, the biggest proponent of that is Bernie Sanders. And I mean, he's been running his mouth for years. $15, they got to have a livable wage. Well, this week, what did we find out? His campaign staff is making anywhere from $9 an hour to $11.50. So after a week and a half of just constant bombardment about this, he couldn't even get on his topic when he was at campaign events. He finally agreed to $15 an hour for all of his campaign workers. But in this same email, it also said that there would be a restructuring of hours. So everybody that was, everybody's hours got cut, and I think I read something where today it said that everybody's getting about 68 to 75% of the hours they were getting before. So guess what? You're getting a per hour raise, but you're not getting any more
That would be
money.
the same thing as buying a bottle of soda for $1, and then they reduce it by 8 ounces, and you still pay $1.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not increasing. You're paying the same amount, but you're getting less. So here he wants to do it, and he's got to cut. Okay, I'll give you the 15, but I got to cut everything. So that's just basic business fundamentals.
As a country, we were kind of on a track to start doing self-checkouts and self-ordering, and you see them more and more at McDonald's. You see, and you see people complain about it. I'm not going to do self-checkout because I'm not going to work for Walmart, or I'm not going to work for Target, or wherever it is. But the truth of the matter is, we were probably a decade away from that. And what happened was they passed a $15 per hour minimum wage in the Seattle and Tacoma area. And within weeks, not months, not years, but within weeks, McDonald's, Burger King, all these fast food restaurants fast-tracked that self-checkout, self-check-in, self-checkout deal. And what happened was a lot of people in the Seattle area lost their jobs. A lot of restaurants had to cut hours. A lot of restaurants downtown Seattle had to close over this whole deal. And it was just simply, most Starbucks had to drop personnel by 1%. So that means one person lost a job in every Starbucks in that Seattle area. And now that that's happened and they found out that they could save that much money just doing that in those areas, it is fast-tracked self-checkout and all this other stuff. So, yeah, okay, you raise it to $15 an hour, and you see how many people lose their jobs. It will be a job killer.
This editorial was saying something about 1.3 million job losses, I believe. Just because of an increase of that. So what a backfire that'll be.
And what happens when let's look at this also, because people don't ever see this. When the price of gas goes up, we complain because milk prices go up, egg prices go up, bread prices go up. The price of gas goes down. Did that milk, egg, and bread, did those prices go down?
Really?
No, they stay right there. Gas goes back up, that goes back up. Oil comes down, those prices stay right there leveled off, and they keep going up, keep going up. Every time you raise the minimum wage, now, every manufacturer out there that has to pay a higher minimum wage has to raise their prices. That means the prices that you pay as a consumer go up, and that means that $15 an hour isn't $15 an hour anymore.
That's why I gave the example of the soda.
Yeah.
As prices were going up,
Yeah.
people are thinking, I don't want to. The public does not want to spend more than $1 for that product they were spending a year for that price. So what we'll do is we'll sell it for the same price, but we're going to give you less of what you're getting. That's why you'll notice bags of chips got a lot more air in it than they do chips. They fluff them up to make them look good, and they give you this excuse, well, it's to make them look fresh and not to chip them.
If you don't think you pay for minimum wage hikes, I hear people all the time say, well, I don't pay property taxes because I rent. Whatever. Who do you think is paying? That owner's not saying, you know what, I'm not going to raise that rent. I'll just go ahead and pay that property taxes out of my own pocket. No, your rent's going to go up to cover that property tax.
And what about,
when the $15 an hour, the prices of what you buy are going to go up to cover that.
What about the other aspect of it? When you get 1.3 million supposed people that would lose their jobs and then they're on welfare, who's paying that?
Yeah.
It's the rest of us who are holding on to our jobs.
And you want to know why our local hospitals, I've heard this a million times. What are our chances of getting the local hospitals back? We really need a hospital here in Cameron. Folks, welfare, Medicaid, Medicare have absolutely killed, more so Medicaid than Medicare, but those two have absolutely killed local, rural hospitals because they cannot make a living at it. And people ask why all the time. Do you know how much a blood test costs if you take it to a regular blood lab?
Not sure.
In the College Station area, it's anywhere from $7 to $10 a test. Do you know how much that costs if you go to an emergency room? $50 to $60 in College Station area. You're paying 5 to 6 times more for a blood test, a basic blood test in the College Station area. And why? Because most ERs have to charge insurance and the same price they charge Medicaid and Medicare. And be able to get that enough money to cover that $7.50, they have to bill $50 or $60 so they can get a $10 on the return because that's all Medicaid and Medicare are going to pay. That's why your health care is so high, and it goes back to minimum wage and everything else.
Okay, look, the clock's running out. I've got articles here on AOC, okay? How do you say it?
Ocasio-Cortez.
Okay? I got all these articles. I'm gonna read this article, and then you can make your comment. This is from let's see. Rand Paul made some comments. I'm gonna read this article. Rand Paul offers to buy ungrateful Omar a ticket back to Somalia. That's gonna kind of surmise this attitude real quick, and then you can make.
That was Elon Omar, not Ocasio-Cortez, though.
Let's see here. I'm sorry, I mixed them up. This is
Yeah.
Omar. Senator Rand Paul weighed in on furor surrounding Democratic Minnesota Rep. Ilhan Omar, suggesting that if she went back to Somalia for a while, she might appreciate America more than she seemingly does now. I hear Rep. Omar say, "Oh, America's a terrible place," Paul said during an interview. "I thought there'd be justice, but there's no justice here. It's like she came here and we fed her, we clothed her, she got welfare, she got school, she got health care, and lo and behold, she has the honor of actually winning a seat in Congress and says we're a terrible country," Paul continued. "I think that's about as ungrateful as you can get," the senator urged. Paul even offered to contribute toward a ticket for Omar to go back to Somalia. "So while I'm not saying we forcibly send her anywhere, I'm willing to contribute to buy a ticket for her to go visit Somalia. I think she could look and maybe learn a little bit about the disaster that is Somalia, that has no capitalism, has no God-given rights guaranteed in the Constitution, and has about 7 different tribes that have been fighting each other for the last 40 years. And maybe after she's done visiting Somalia for a while, she might come back and appreciate America more," Paul concluded. That's part of the article. That woman and people like her, if you don't like it, I'll back them up. Get the hell out.
There's a vet. I can't think of her name.
Billy,
She's a Republican vet. You can look her up, and she's going to run against Omar. And she may be the first Republican to win that district in a long time, because she's picked up a lot of traction in that area, because they're redistricting that area. And a lot of that Muslim support that Omar got last time will be redistricted out. So we can only hope. But I agree. I mean, I agree with what Representative Paul said. The president said something about they should go back to that country. He never mentioned who it was, and everybody jumped on it. It would be those 4. But she definitely needs to take a look at what she's doing.
If you're not happy, get the hell out.
The problem with her is, I mean, she is exalted everything that this country's against. And she is anti-Semitic as they come, so she needs to go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. It's always a pleasure to have you on, Bill. It's a great conversation, and you got a lot of smarts when it comes to that, as well as many other things. So until next week, ladies and gentlemen, keep your powder dry, and God bless.